Perhaps most exciting, there was Taiga's Veyron, which he may or may not be considerably behind on his payments with. One of my favorite Jeremy Clarkson quotes is something that I relate to very much personally. He was being asked by some reporter, how do you fit in all these interesting cars that you test? And his answer was, I can fit into anything that I want to. And that's generally been my experience. Clarkson's only an inch shorter than I am. And, you know, having driven just about everything under the sun, if I really want to get in there and make it move, I can usually find a way to do that. But there have been two exceptions in my personal experience, and those are Dodge Vipers and Lotus Esprits. I've always wanted a Viper. I mean, the idea of like a snakeskin green ACR to me is just an awesome car to own. It's American. I like snakes. It's pretty reliable. You can put a bunch of miles on them, and there's a good kind of rarity and demand in the marketplace for them. But I just cannot get comfortable. I'm a little bit more torso, and my head is just wedged against the roof, and I can't do it, particularly with a helmet, which is what you need to really have as much fun as possible in those cars. But the other is a Lotus Esprit, and until I ended up working at a Lotus dealership for a good while, I thought it was just a tremendous car to own. Obviously, they're miserably unreliable, but they have this Lamborghini-esque styling. They're rare, they're fast for whatever period they're salient to, and I thought it'd be a great idea. And actually, as a kid, you know, like any 16, 17-year-old boy, I had this fantasy of my father buying some interesting sports car for his daily commute in traffic in Atlanta, and he would always just say no. But I think at one point he decided to kind of let me go a little bit further down that imaginary rabbit hole and see what it would be like, because I must have been, like I said, 16, 17 years old, and I found a 1994 Lotus Esprit S4 for sale. And at the time, I guess it had to have been in either the AJC, the newspaper classifieds, or in the printed version of Auto Trader that you had to go buy at the gas station. And at the time, it was a really good deal. I think it was about 25 grand or so, and it was the S4 with the wing halfway up the C-pillar, kind of a weird look, but I just thought, hey, it's awesome. And you could kind of tell by the ad it wasn't in perfect shape. And I think that was kind of my dad's logic. Let's let Ed go see what this thing's like and learn how awful these cars are. So he indulged me in the 2-hour or so trip up to the middle of South Carolina one Saturday afternoon to look at this car, which to me was like, Dad's really going to buy this thing. We're going to have a Lotus. But clearly that wasn't the case. So we get up there, and he tries to sit in it. My dad's an inch taller than I am, and there was no chance. I mean, he couldn't even get his head inside the car. And of course, so he gets out. Of course, I'm much more motivated, so I do get in it and go out for a test drive. And, you know, the insinuations of the ad were correct. We found this car in a barn. It had been driven a little bit, so it wasn't just abandoned there, but it was not in good shape at all. I think the roof panel was missing, which wasn't a huge bother because I'd already done enough research to know that we were going to have to get the newer glass one to gain about a ½ inch of headroom without the padding. One of the doors panels was falling off. The window was stuck down. The keys didn't exactly work with the immobilizer, and he'd hacked through that some way. The engine cover wouldn't stay closed. And of course, the speedometer didn't work, but it felt like we were just flying down these country roads. And I'm grinning ear to ear, just thinking, this is fantastic. But of course, we get back, and my dad's like, yeah, sorry, this isn't going to work for us. We're not going to buy it. And I'm like, no, we'll call you. And, you know, this had been my dad's attempt to kind of expose me to the grim finish below the glossy veneer of derelict exotic car ownership, and hopefully thwart my interest in future ownership of such things, which obviously he failed miserably at, because a tremendous portion of my life has been defined by searching for, buying, fixing, driving, owning all the things about terrible examples of really, really cool cars. And even to this day, I have this undying urge that I can't stop for some reason, that every few months I've got to try to buy some terrible car. And lately I've just had zero success at it, and it's been bothering me because I've been out shopping looking for stuff, and I think a lot of it is because, you know, the LP640 has just been delayed and delayed and delayed, but it is getting close. We're just waiting on one little trim piece to put one of the quarter windows in, and it should be back, I guess, soon. But this week, or really for the last 3 or 4 weeks, I have been making all the ridiculous offers I could ever imagine on all sorts of terrible ideas of cars to buy. I got this idea that I wanted a Ferrari 599, something that I can actually fit in comfortably, and I found one that was in a flood in Miami. Seemed like a great option. It had been in an accident before that as well. perfect. So it had been rebuilt, but the guy was just way too fond of it. I couldn't get to a number that worked. Found another $599 that had a bunch of miles and 4 accidents in the span of 3 years. So it should be cheap, but again, I couldn't get to a number that really made sense. I found an 04 stick Gallardo in the same color combination as Kimmy's and thought that'd be an interesting novelty to have, but it just wasn't, again, quite cheap enough. And the rare stick Gallardos, along with like stick V10 R8s, which I think there's only about 350 in the US, seem like a good option that you could probably eventually make some money on. But as I find them, I just can't quite get excited enough to own them. There's a Ferrari 550 Maranello that I try to buy from its owner every, 4, 5, 6 months. And he's continued after 3 or 4 years of me trying to still want to keep it. But I think there's a glimmer of hope there one day. And I also found a couple other exotic cars that were just track rats. One was a really high mile Ferrari F430 Scuderia that had actually been a track rental car, had a lot of non-original components, was just beat to death. Made what I thought was a good offer on that, and it didn't work. And also found a track rat orange GT3 RS, which is just one of those cars I love, mostly because it's orange, but also it's a good car, I suppose. And again, it had a ton of miles that were almost all on a track, and I couldn't make it work. So no luck there. I don't know, I found a salvage title Carrera GT that might have had some tub damage, who could really say, but it seemed like a good deal. But again, the guy just couldn't quite get to where I needed to be to make it make sense. Perhaps most exciting, there was Taiga's Veyron, which he may or may not be considerably behind on his payments with, and it's got a little bit of paint work and a lot of miles and kind of some patchy ownership history. I think Jamie Foxx ran over a nail and had to have it towed and then the tire replaced, and maybe the wheels might need to be replaced soon, so who knows. But I was kind of excited about that, but again, he owes a little much and it just really didn't make quite enough sense there. But there were 2 cars that I think I was most interested in, and they were both, as it turns out, recently lost in poker games. The first was a Ferrari 360 Challenge car, which was purported to have been raced somewhat successfully and never crashed, which is not true of any Ferrari Challenge car, but I guess that the guy had gambled it in a poker game and lost it. And this guy and a girl that were somewhat related were trying to sell it. And the guy had put it on Facebook Marketplace for 25 grand. I immediately said, yep, I'll have it. Can I buy this car? But of course he gets bombarded by requests and decides that it's worth more and just marks it sold, and I don't get it. So I assume somebody else bought it. But then a week or so later, out of the blue, I get a call from a friend of mine who had seen it for sale somewhere else and was just asking my advice on the car. And I said, well, I just tried to buy it for this. He's like, oh, well, it's more now, but I'm still interested. And he had a friend that had bought my BMW M5 that was in Dallas, so he went to look at the car, and in the process may have fallen in love with the female party that was selling it. And he was very grateful for the referral, but again, was not able to get it down to a price point that made sense, so I didn't get to buy that car. And there was another poker game car, a 2008 Koenigsegg CCX. And that car apparently had sat since it was delivered new, accumulating no miles, and it had frozen. And the engine block and the transmission case had cracked. So the car didn't run, and I think Koenigsegg's quote to replace both was like 500 or 600 grand, and the owner didn't feel like doing that. So it had set, and eventually he got the bright idea to gamble it in a poker game and lost it. And some guy had won it and just decided it was the greatest garage art he could ever ask for, and was very happy to let it just sit there not moving. And so I made him an offer, but we just couldn't get to where it needed to be. And again, my shrewd negotiation has not been working lately, and I'm very upset about that. But when I talk about shrewd negotiation, what it really means is finding a car that's at the very low end of whatever the appropriate value spectrum is for those cars, and then hoping that whatever strikes against it are so severe that it just alienates most of the rest of the interested parties. So you're generally bidding against no one else. So even though my offers on these were pretty low, I don't think they were really getting other offers except for the higher ones, obviously, in the Ferrari Challenge cars case. And, I don't know. I hope I'll find something soon. I constantly keep searching, and of course the Mercy will be back soon enough I can drive that and feel better about it. But, it's always fun to shop and make offers. You can't catch them unless you throw enough lines in the water. And so I was sad not to make any of those work, but I'm sure I'll find something else very soon, and I'm sure it'll be something absolutely terrible. VINwiki trusts AP3 paint protection with all of our cars. To learn more about clear bra options and ceramic coating, visit ap3atl.com.